I'll put these back up. These are just sharing. Anyone's interested in following Jolyon on the various socials. I know he's on Twitter, very active on Twitter and Instagram. There you can find out his information.
Yeah, guys, that's the only reason I'm doing this, to get more followers. So if you guys don't follow me, there's literally no point in me being here. Really looking to increase my Dutch audience, you know.
How is your Dutch, Jolyon?
It's fantastic. It's not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad.
Great. Okay. Good. Okay, so we'll do this.
Just a bit of casual racism there, guys. Sorry to open it up with that. Seems very appropriate in the modern media landscape, though.
Yeah, no problem here. Speaking to the right audience.
Especially when you're a white Western male.
I was just thinking, is this an audience of entirely white men? No, Emma is here as well.
Thank you, Emma. I owe you a $5.
It's good because we'll talk some about that and what I think our responsibility is. Great. So, Stu, we don't have that much time, do we? So...
Yeah, no. Okay, I'll give it one more minute, because let's see. We've got Levi is about to enter the room. That's very good. Okay, and that means that we can get going. Okay, I will stop sharing now so I can get to see everyone's faces. Let us begin. Let's go. Okay, so first of all, just some good practice housekeeping. I am recording this session. A few students have asked if they could watch a recording because they couldn't make it. And that means that by all means, feel free to wear wigs, put on fake moustaches, fake glasses, cover yourself in glitter, but do please keep your cameras on so that Jolyon can see the person that he's speaking with if he's speaking to you. That's one little bit. Okay, so the purpose of this this hour-long masterclass is hopefully to expand our ideas of what journalism is and can be, and perhaps that you can come away from this session being able to be inspired and think about how you might apply some wider thinking into your own work, and in particular, the role of interviewing and how that can play within your journalism work. Okay, now I'm sure that Jolyon won't mind, so I'm actually also letting people in, so I'm playing a multitask role here. It's quite impressive. So I'm sure Jolyon won't mind if we take a non-traditional role and do not follow protocol, as Jolyon is a fan of doing himself, in the way that we do this. Traditionally, there'll be a presenter, that'll be me in this instance, there'll be a guest, that'll be Jolyon, and we ask a bunch of questions, and at the end, there'll be a Q&A. Well, that's not what we're going to do today. I hope that we're going to do something that's a little bit more inviting for us all to participate in, and we're going to do that by playing a little game. I'm going to tell you the rules of that game in about 5 minutes time, but meanwhile, before I do, I want us all to be thinking about a question or perhaps an interview technique that you would like to employ in asking Jolyon a question. Imagine that you have 5 minutes with your ideal interviewee and you've got to ask that key question. You've got just that one moment. What are you going to ask them? Imagine that's your scenario. This is that, okay? So everyone have in mind, start thinking about what informed question you would like to bring to Jolyon's attention and discuss with him. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, welcome, Jolyon Rubinstein. Jolyon is an actor, a filmmaker, a YouTuber, and most recently, a podcaster with his absolutely excellent The New Conspiracist, which I've been really enjoying, Jolyon. Jolyon is renowned for employing unconventional techniques in getting the material that he wants to get. And that includes political satire, comedy sketches, the design and writing of comedy sketches, interviewing in a range of different characters, which at different points are there to disarm the interviewee and otherwise enable them to express their feelings on different subjects that they might not ordinarily feel enabled to do so. And also with his more recent work, particularly more traditional interviewing techniques in his wonderful interviews with like Ian Hislop and most recently Adam Curtis. Really great. And I would say from my point of view, what it seems to be is that Jolyon's work opens up journalism, and particularly journalism with a political focus, to new and often younger audiences. And also that for all of us, it's an opportunity to reflect on some of our own assumptions, perhaps biases that we believe that are confronted by Jolyon's work. That's Jolyon. Now, Jolyon, I thought it would also be nice to introduce us a little bit. This is, we are a journalism school in the middle of Holland, in Tilburg. And I don't know how many of my actual students are in this class, but a few of us have just completed a module called Interviewing in English, where students have been assigned a country in Europe where where English is commonly spoken, and they have to go and analyze the media landscape of that country and get a sense of the sort of journalism culture of that country, and find a newsworthy story and a key stakeholder in that story, go and interview them, and then deliver that interview, which our students will have just done. And also students that are here from other years will have done this. So that's a little bit about the sort of mindset of what the students here have just been doing. And when I was giving this assignment, I was like, you know, why are they having all the fun? I want to do this too. And so that is the sort of foundation, the platform for which I contacted you. You are my key stakeholder in the subject of interviewing technique.
Right.
And that is why, this sort of was set up this way. And okay, so I promised you a game, right? The way this is going to work is, Jolyon, I'm going to ask you the first question.
Right.
And together we're going to explore that question together. And that will be your cue, once we've sort of completed that, for you to ask one of the guests that are in this room, one of the students or teachers in this room, a question of your own that will allow you to get to know them. I mean, if you're up for this, you to get to know them and to test them as an interviewee. And once they answer that question, it'll be their cue to ask you an interview question in return. So it's a bit like a game of interview tennis where everyone's playing against Jolyon.
Come on then.
Okay, so everyone, is that clear to everyone, right? If it's not, then you shouldn't be at university. Right. Okay, so I'll start with my question, Jolyon. The interviewing in English course, you know, prior to COVID, was something that students would do actually physically. They would go to the country that they had been assigned and do everything that I just said in person. One of the multitude of impacts of COVID has been that students cannot do that. And this whole last year or so has been, as for everyone, a huge challenge for teachers, and particularly, I would say, for students in terms of the experience of learning that they've had to deal with. My question to you is, how has the last year or so been a challenge to you? And also, perhaps, what insights could you share with us in terms of what we can bring forward to the future?
Well, listen, hello, everyone. It's very nice to digitally meet you. I've just been looking up Tilburg on Google Maps to work out where you are, rocking the centre of Holland. I'm sure you're more than happy to be speaking to someone in East London right now. Before I answer what Stuart's saying, there is a profound importance to be having a meeting, which I feel very privileged to have, with a group of young, up-and-coming journalists on the first anniversary of the lynching of George Floyd, where citizen journalism, the use of technology, fundamentally changed a global narrative around structural racism. And my work has always been about trying to engender social justice but not in some sort of like woke way, in terms of using empirical fact to hold the powerful to account. And I've used comedy for that. I've used, any number of things. And to answer Stu's question, it's been extremely difficult. There's been huge mental health challenges. I've had bouts of depression for sure. The realities of a hugely uncertain, unsettling, once in 100-year pandemic is, I think, brought me closer to those quotes that resonate from great writers like, George Orwell, or even, Keats, who talk about the nature of living through history, and that you are really close to the core of history. But for all of you who are listening to what I'm saying today, I would place profound importance on the level of kindness and warmth, but also of self-care that one must take. Because certainly when I was your age and entering higher education, and which was deeply social, fundamentally it's a social experience, was a sense of profound concern about my own, where I was going to go to in the future, where I'm going to get to, how I'm going to get out there. And being kind to yourself at this point and appreciating that, we've gone through a seismic change in global society is where I want to start with this. Because if you are interested in journalism, then you are someone who seeks the truth. But the thing is, we're now living in a world, and this is, to answer Stu's questions, one of the reasons I found my mental health suffer so much, where until very recently, the president of the United States was tweeting in caps locks that he might bomb Iran, right? It's beyond the realms of what we expect it to be, normality. But it's also been hugely confronting, because fact in itself is under assault. Because for a lot of people now, because they feel something very strongly, they equate that with truth, which it fundamentally isn't. So Stu, there you go. I've had a really easy pandemic, mate. I've had a lovely time. Would you like me to ask one of the questions to?
I do, but I just want to quickly follow up. You talked about the challenges. What about? Do you have an insight of? We've just started a YouTube channel. Sorry, a podcasting channel. What about insights of things that maybe we can bring forward that is not necessarily positive, but lessons that will help you in the future?
Well, I have just recorded an entire series of a podcast on Zencast, which is a platform that sort of basically means that you can take individual tracks of audio. So it's not just recorded as sort of one channel, basically. The entire series recorded through the internet. And actually that, in a way, it opens up huge possibilities of who you could speak to. So for instance, our first guest of this series was an Oscar-winning documentary maker, Alex Gibney, who, if you haven't seen his work as journalists, I would strongly advise you to watch it. It's profoundly important. He made a movie called Going Clear, which sort of blew the lid off Scientology. He made a film called Taxi to the Dark Side, which looked at the war on terror and won him, the best Oscar. But he was in New York, I was in London, and we were using, exactly the same software that we're using basically today to record something that became a product that was then able to go out to an audience, and become a show. And it's the fundamental truth of globalization that for your generation particularly, the world is as fast or as far away as your fiber optic broadband is, and you need to sort of like really have a think about utilizing that, because also fortune favors the bold, fortune favors the brave. I didn't get any of these interviews by listening to that little voice in my head that was going, oh man, if I call him up and ask him, he's going to think I'm an idiot. I'm nobody. Why is this Oscar-winning director going to help me out? You have to get past that. And then you need to say, this is why I want to speak to you. You're this person to me. And I'm really trying to, talk about this. And you will find, my friends, that the bolder you are, the better the results you have, and you have to be brave, especially at the beginning, because that's not easy, to get the guts up to make that call, or to send that direct message, or to write that email.
Great.
But it has real significance now because of the pandemic, this technology.
Amazing. That's great. Okay. Now, all right, Jolyon, you are the interviewer.
Cool. Sam, how you doing?
Very good.
Nice cap. Like it.
Thank you.
Sam, why do you want to be a journalist?
Because I'm interested in a wide variety of subjects and topics, and I think that would come in handy when you're a journalist, because you're always writing about various topics and various things, basically.
Sam, apart from writing, what do you think other forms of expression journalists now have open to them? What tools?
Video, audio, and always a sort of what we're doing this project basically is a blend of all three, where you have certain topics are written about, certain topics are made into video, and certain are made into audio, and they're all sort of working together.
So what do you think, Sam, is the most effective platform to meet people from your generation?
For my generation, I think video. I think that will make the biggest impression on people.
I agree. And also, 60-second TikToks, are probably profoundly more important in many ways to work out how to communicate your ideas in than just a written word.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I ask a couple more, Stuart?
No, now I'd like Sam, if that'll be your cue, Sam. If we're going to play by the rules of the game, that is. You don't want to break any rules here. Sam, you are the interviewer, and Jolyon, you are the interviewee.
Okay, so in your basically in your introduction, or as in the answer to the question to Stuart, you basically said that in the current age, facts and feelings are basically interchangeable. Do you think that's maybe sort of a temporary change, where people will, because of internet and because of it's basically rather new in the grand scheme of things, or do you think that will be a sort of permanent change where if politicians can create strong feelings, they are basically just as valuable as facts?
That's a great question, Sam. And what you're getting to is the fundamental nub of what I wanted to talk to you all about today. So as Stuart said, I have a show called The New Conspiracist. It's a podcast about conspiracy theories. Each week we take a conspiracy theory, be it 9/11 or flat Earth or whatever, and we unpack it. Why do people believe it? Why don't they believe it? And is it true or not? Now, the reason I started that podcast was because I started to do a lot of research post 2015 into the billions of pounds, rubles, and dollars that has been spent on creating the most amount of misinformation possible to undermine what was called the third estate, which was journalism, but also to fundamentally change the nature of fact, because to really disembowel people's relationship with the truth, you don't need everyone to believe you. You just need to create a level of doubt, and that doubt itself creates an apathy and a sense that nothing ever changes, that no one can be trusted, and therefore, why should you participate in society? You may as well be apathetic and escape from it. I think what Sam said is so important, because he's right. Like, we are we have entered a new epoch, a new age. When the printing press was invented, rationalism and the idea of empirical truth became something that was lauded. In fact, it's what all the Western, thought, Western university education is based upon: the importance of evidence, the importance of fact, the coalescing of those into a thesis. the problem that we face is that the media itself, the transmission of information now in TikTok, used to be Facebook, Twitter, Insta, you know, it's evolving at a pace that is so difficult for the generations who are older, who really control a lot of these media platforms, to keep up with in terms of what they can legally sort of you know, how they can regulate them. And the other fundamental problem, Sam, that is inherent in the system is the idea of what constitutes a publisher. Now, I'm going to make this super simple because it can become quite complicated. Right now, all social media sites say they are not publishers. They are places where people can put on whatever they want, be it fake or real, right? It's up to you. It's your capacity. Now, this may seem like a good idea initially, but unfortunately, we're now living in an age where people of your generation, often without much education in media literacy, equate something that they've seen on YouTube or on Facebook to something they've seen in the New York Times or Der Spiegel or Le Monde or, you know, the New York Times. And there is a fundamental difference in them, because when you publish something on the New York Times as an article, you can be sued for defamation, libel, slander, if the facts that you present are not correct. But if I make a YouTube video and I shout my mouth off about something, someone could try to prosecute me. But even if I had said literally in the video, this is a fact, and then I stated something that was untrue, for instance, say that the Democrats run a paedophile ring and Hillary Clinton is a satanic baby-eating worshipper who works under a pizza restaurant, right? Or that vaccines are somehow connected to 5G and actually you shouldn't get a vaccine because the New World Order are trying to control us all. I could not be prosecuted in a court of law for that because they are not legally a publisher. So that's a very long way of explaining something that I think is so fundamental to your media landscape. I'm sure you all knew all of this already, but for me, these are the absolute fundamentals. So shall I ask another question now?
Yeah, ask a question, different person.
Okay.
Thanks, Julian.
Luca, how are you doing?
There are two Lucas, I know.
Okay, we'll go for Luca Berbers for now. I can't hear you, mate. I think you might still be on mute, maybe. Okay, well, let's wait for him to go. Let's go to the other Luca. Hi, Luca, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, and you?
Yes, I'm very good. I'm very good. So I noticed the ratio of men to women in this session, but also it's actually quite reflective of the industry itself, which is extremely worrying because, you know, when you have only 20% versus say 80% male versus female, you can come into serious issues. What concerns do you have moving into the workplace as a female journalist? Do you have issues around, are you concerned about misogyny? Are you concerned about those kind of issues? Or do you think that is something that won't affect you as a journalist?
I think in other work fields, that problem is worse than as a journalist, I think, because when you work somewhere where you work in a team together with other people, I think it's worse to be 80-20 with men and women. But yeah. I do think that it's always good to have it more equal than the big part men and the small part women.
So I'm going to keep asking you questions. So you're obviously studying journalist. You want to be a journalist. What are the subjects that you think are most urgent for journalists to be addressing at this stage in 2021?
I think that in places like Paris, when something happens and 3 people die, it's all over the news. And then in countries that are poor and things like that happen more often than here in Europe, it is like, oh, okay, it's happening again. It's not that big of a thing, but there are way more people dying and there are worse things. Then, yeah, it's also not good when there are in Paris 3 people dying, but I think in those countries it's like a normal thing, so they don't get the attention anymore. So I think that is a thing that needs to be changed, and that they're also important enough to report about.
And why do you think that is happening? Why do you think we have such a focus on our own national agendas rather than looking to those countries that you mentioned?
Yeah, of course, Paris is closer to the Netherlands than a country in Africa, but it's also a cultural thing, I think, because the people in Paris, for example, are more like, they live more like the way we live. So I think we can relate more to them. So we also feel like it's important to know about things that happen there, and things in Africa is also, I think, for most of the people in Europe, another world.
It's interesting because you've touched on something that I was very, very pleased that we got into, which is something that is sort of sweeping all of our nations, particularly in the West, which is the idea of us and them, and ourselves and the other. And since the election of Donald Trump, since the Brexit vote in the United Kingdom, there has been a huge heightening of nationalistic rhetoric from politicians and from client journalists, which will... Do you understand what I mean when I say client journalist? Just give me a nod of the head, no, or yes, no. So what that means is that a free press is the idea that one can ask a question in a democracy of a democratically elected government, and that they will openly and honestly answer you back. And journalism's role is to call governments to account for wrongdoing that they can factually evidence, right? So whether it's a corruption scandal about, I don't know, a payback because a power station was built, or they've been possibly, taking expenses that they shouldn't have. However, we are now living in a media landscape where a lot of journalists only are allowed to interview government if the government knows what questions they're going to ask, and if the government actually wants these questions to be asked. So when we talk about client journalism, there are newspapers in the United Kingdom that are far closer to the government policy than other newspapers. They get preferential access because they push the line that government wants. Hey, it's a really exciting, positive world in 2021. Woohoo! Ideals have just gone down the sink, and it's your job to get them back. So,
great. And now,
Stu,
Luca,
how do you want to do this? Do you want Luca to ask me a question now?
That's the idea, Luca. The floor is yours.
Okay, I was wondering what experience has made the biggest impact on you?
Do you mean in my work?
Yeah, while interviewing, or just when researching, you found something.
So as Stuart was saying, I play a lot of really silly comedy characters as well. Do you guys know Ali G or Borat? Have you seen that? So that's the kind of stuff that I do, but as a political character. So there was a newspaper called the Daily Mail in the UK. So I was like, hello, I'm Dale Maley, and welcome to Inside the Story. Behind me are a load of lesbians, anarchists, and Corbynistas who hate Princess Diana. You know what I mean? Horrendous, cartoon-like, racist character, right? But it made other people feel more comfortable with me because they knew that I was kind of saying what they were saying. So they would tell us stuff. So about 4 years ago, I was filming in Texas, in outside an abortion clinic that had already been closed by pro-life activists. We'd just been in a church service where they had rewritten the Lord's Prayer, which is, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, to literally say anyone who has an abortion will burn in hell. And then on the stage, they brought up these women, mainly Hispanic women, who were crying because they had had an abortion. And it was something they called the Holocaust of the Unborn. And it had a profound effect on me because I was deeply, deeply bemused and confused and terrified, frankly, by the extreme hatred, really, I think, that they sort of seem to have for these people who do this, and this is wrong, and I am right, and you know, and Texas is a scary place. I don't know if any of you've been, but you know, everyone's walking around with guns. It's very strange. But yeah, experiences like that. I was filmed also in a maximum security prison called Tent City Prison, which I'd like you all to Google so you can see it. So it has it had a sheriff called Joe Arpaio, who was famous because he would only, you know, it costs more to feed my dogs than it does to feed these felons. And this was in the Arizona desert, and they had built, they had used Second World War tents because the city of Phoenix didn't have enough funds to make the prison bigger. And it was like walking into a concentration camp because there were people who were deeply dehydrated. You know, it's 45 degrees. There's no air conditioning. It's outside. And, you know, it was deeply moving because, you know, people coming up to me being like, you know, I haven't done it. I haven't done it. And this is a state where if you get caught with one joint, if you're smoking marijuana, or if you are a sex worker and you get caught one time, that's it for you. Bang, 10 years. You know, it's not a liberal state at all. And you find, and it's important to know this because I have a lot of friends who are war correspondents. When you are telling a story, you give a part of yourself to that. It will cost you something. So don't be naive because, you know, we all only have a finite amount of energy. And what I experienced at that place, Luca, was an extreme drain of my energy and a sadness. And that can often mean that you stop doing your job properly, because I came out of character, particularly in the prison. I was just absolutely, you know, excuse my language, but I was fucking disgusted with these people. It disgusted me, you know, the way they were treating other human beings. But because I did that, because I lost focus, I did not do my job properly. And that's what I'm also saying to you. So as a journalist, your job is to somehow protect yourself and disconnect so you can do your job with the icy, cool, clear mind. Uplifting stuff, right?
Definitely. Listen, we don't have too long, and I'd like to spend a few minutes at the end actually having a little bit of an analysis of the way in which this went in terms of the different kind of questioning and observation. So let's move on and maybe a little bit more pace. Just
sorry, man.
No, mate, that was beautiful. This is super interesting stuff. Let's carry on. Jolyon, who are you going to ask? It's your turn.
Okay, well, let's ask Emma. How you doing, Emma? You okay? Oh, is Emma's PA there?
Yes, sorry, Luca and I are in the same room, so if we put on volume of both our computers, it will.
That's cool. I mean, I prefer to think that you've got your own staff and you're just telling, can you just, you know, unmute?
Yeah. No, yeah. Luca, no, sorry, what was the question?
I'm interested. Why did you decide you wanted to get into journalism?
Yeah, I've always loved writing, and I feel like in general I like a lot of subjects and stuff. Like I'm interested in music, I am interested in this and in that, and I thought like as a journalist you get to experience a bit of everything, and I also think that you can go a lot of ways with journalism. Yeah.
So how would you feel, Emma, if I was your editor and I started saying to you that, look, you know, your piece of writing it's very good, but it's not getting enough shares. It's not getting enough clicks. And that actually is very, very important to my business model, because if my journalists don't get the shares and the clicks, then I'm afraid, you know, there are others that do. How would you not? I'm not asking you to get angry about that, because what I'm describing is a reality of modern journalism, right? So you all need to accept this as well. So without compromising yourself ethically, right? How could you try to make sure that, you know, your article was being shared and that it was getting an audience?
Oh, I hear myself. That's a tough question. I think, yeah, try to make it more interesting. So to make a title or maybe pictures with it that really interest people, and so that they will click. But yeah, I think I wouldn't like it. But yeah, apart from that, I know sometimes it's reality. But yeah,
I think what you said there is absolutely the thing. What you just said there, which is make sure you have a very strong image, right? Very strong image, and make sure that you can still make a title very interesting without making it misleading.
Yeah.
And what you will find is when you work at papers is that most of the time your sub-editor, so when I give in a piece of writing to a paper, you don't decide the title.
No.
That's usually up to them. I would suggest that you always make a suggestion, right? Because it's your piece of work. Look, they can take it or leave it. That's not up to you.
Yeah, that's true.
It's worth doing. What you said there is absolutely, you said the answer that, you know, is the correct answer, which is think about your title and think about the images that go with your work.
Yeah. Yes. Should I ask my question now?
Go for it, Emma.
Yeah. Is there a certain person or maybe a certain subject that you would really like to interview someone about, like that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I mean, I would one of my heroes is a guy called Jon Stewart. He used to run a show, an American show called The Daily Show. I don't know if you guys know Trevor Noah, but Trevor Noah sort of is the host of The Daily Show now. Him and Stephen Colbert. I think also Sacha Baron Cohen for me is the person that I'm most fascinated by. He's the only person I'm starstruck around. I just can't. I'm just like, wow. But I think that in terms of the questions that need to be asked right now and the issues, we're in an extraordinary time. You are living through an extraordinary period of time in history. Things are changing very fast. And this is slightly cheating, but I would want to speak to Mark Zuckerberg about why he is not a publisher and why he is, you know, why they're not taking responsibility for the monster that they have created, which is fundamentally undermining Western liberal democracy and has the very strong possibility of, for your entire generation, making you all deeply apathetic, making you all feel that you can't trust anyone, which is so counterproductive, you know, because, you know, it is your responsibility, it's my responsibility as white Europeans, you know, the children of empire. You know, the reason we sit in Europe in this predominantly peaceful place is because of our histories and the people who've come before us, and many areas of the world that have suffered greatly as a result. But the thing is that you can't change anything until you take control of government. And for left-leaning or, you know, people of a liberal mind who believe in human rights genuinely for all human beings, it's really important that that change takes place. Anyway, I could just talk for hours and hours. Thanks, Emma. That was great. Luca, are you back with your headphones? Can you talk now?
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Amazing. So yeah, Luca's got a kind of an interesting American twang. Is it Canadian twang or is it American twang to the accent?
Well, I'm Dutch, so there's not. But in primary school, I was taught American English, and then in high school, I was taught British English. So
I like it.
My accent switches like every other sentence.
I think that's cool. I think you go to New York, the girls would be like, "Oh my God, I love your Dutch American English accent." So Luca, same sort of question to you, mate. Why? Okay, I'll slightly change it. Why is journalism important?
I think it's important because it can offer you a platform to actually change something in the world, and I think that's the only reason why I like it, honestly. To be honest, I never wanted to become a journalist. Never. People have been telling me for my entire life that I should go into journalism and do that, and I've always kind of been like, that's not for me. But here I am, and I don't know. It was kind of a way for me to get into philosophy, which is what I actually wanted to do. But when I started at this school, I just found out that it's so much easier to actually bring change when you can have people listen to you and you can make productions about things you think are important. And I've always been big on like social issues like gay rights and racism and stuff like that. And I've always been big on that, but I never really had a platform to spread it on. And I think journalism for me is a way to do that.
That's a really interesting thing you've just said there, Luca, because when you said you don't have a platform to spread it on, let's imagine that you decided to be extremely brave and you decided as a result of some of the things you've heard today and stuff that you decided to set up your own channel, right? To spread those. What do you think would be the most effective channel for you to set something on and try and get your message out?
I think probably video, because most of the written things I think are usually aimed at older audiences. It's like they say, the youth is the future, so you have to aim for younger people, I guess, to read.
So you've made your video, you've made it. Now what do you do with it?
That's a good question. I mean, you have to look at a place where they can actually publish it. Because I guess if there's a pre-existing platform, they would have more views on it. I
think the thing is, we're living in a very interesting time, you see, because if we were talking 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, really, although the change had definitely taken place then, you would have needed to work for a television company in order to put out video content. That was video journalism. Today, everyone can be a video journalist if they want. And also, everyone's in control of the means of production. So I have my phone, and through this phone, through a downloaded app, I can upload my video to a global audience. That is a profound change. And all of you have to take on board. You have to think about this. We're living in a new era where unless you're already doing it, they probably won't give you the job to do it. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's how it should be. I'm just trying to explain to you the realities of the competitive workplace at the minute. Sure, you may get an internship and that may give you an opportunity, but let's just say hypothetically that there was a event like I was explaining that I'd experienced in Texas, but let's say it was at a abortion clinic in The Hague, and the event was being covered by some news, but not that many. Or let's say there was an Extinction Rebellion rally or a Black Lives Matter rally, and some skinheads came down and started a fight with some of those people. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying this is what you should do. This is a hypothetical example. This is not the masterclass guest saying you need to go to these rallies. That is entirely a personal prerogative, right? Personal safety is always my most paramount thing. But the truth is that when you put out a video from one of these events, you may end up capturing something that becomes what the news uses. And the thing is, that is a profound shift in media, because often my girlfriend, who is a journalist, she has been plenty of things, even something silly like when we were going through in London, there's a place in the West End called Soho, and the lockdown laws had just been changed, so it relaxed there. And she filmed just saying in Soho right now on Twitter. And within about an hour, 12, 15 different news organizations had said, "Hi, Ava, can we please use your footage?" They just tweeted at her, "Do you allow us to use your footage?" So what I'm trying to say to you all is that you are probably much more powerful and have much more agency than you realize, right? And that is really important to think about, because look, I feel helpless most of the time, right? Like we all do. You know, it's okay to feel like that. But it's important also to remember and be reminded of how much agency we can have. Thanks for your question, Luca.
Great. I think we've got time for just a couple more. Is that a question to you coming from Luca? Am I right, or have I skipped one?
Yeah, no, that was the question that Luca asked me, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, the question I wanted to ask was, there's so many different journalists, and there's even more podcasts and things published online. And like we said in the beginning, even right now, there's mostly white men here. And in journalism in general, like most things, it is basically dominated by white cishet men. So why do you think your message deserves to be heard? Why do you think you can make a difference in that?
Because this is such an interesting point. So what I did in my professional career was that I racially profiled myself in order to work out where I could get into to basically fuck them up. So I decided to and in my career, you know, I've had interactions with Donald Trump, David Cameron, Boris Johnson, Samuel L. Jackson, like everything from the Cannes Film Festival to, you know, the Republican Party conference. And I like you, Luca, from your question, I presume we're quite similar like this. I think it is our responsibility to use our white privilege. So what that means to me is being at the very front of Black Lives Matter protests, on a megaphone, talking about how important it is, calling out racism, calling out xenophobia, calling out homophobia, calling out transphobia, right? And saying this is not acceptable. And your generation are far, far better at doing that than my generation, because I am, as Stuart well knows, you know, an outlier in our sort of social group, most of whom, to be honest, want a quiet life. And that is not what happens online. I have received more anti-Semitism in the last week than I have in my entire life. And yet I'm saying, you know, on a regular basis that, you know, the UN resolutions on Palestine have to be respected. But the thing is, you're living in a very difficult time. What you said, Luca, as well, I want to say something else, which is that a lot of the reason a lot of people get very radicalized is they don't think that white privilege is their fault. They're like, look, man, I'm fucking broke. My mum isn't any way like making the money. You know, I don't have any money. What is this thing? Like, I don't get it. It makes me angry. I'm just trying to make my way. I get that. But that's understandable, right? Because you've also got to be extremely kind to yourself, because, you know, all of our little inner childs get kicked up when that stuff happens. And the thing is, Luca, the other thing that I learned being a guy called Jolyon Rubinstein, who was bullied loads in school and who, like, you know, never did like the normal thing, is that, you know, you can only be you. You can only be you. And every story that you want to tell is because you're you, and no one else can be you. And every mistake I've made professionally and all things is when I was trying not to be myself on some level, you know, like on some really profound level. And a wise man, after I made my show, Revolutionary Televised, said to me, the people that matter don't mind. And the people that matter, the people that matter don't mind. And the people that mind don't matter. And it's something that I've really kept close to my heart, because, you know, it can be really tough putting yourself out there. Anyway, how do I say your name, young man? How do I say it? Buki?
Bauke.
Bauke, sorry, this dyslexic. This is dyslexic.
It's okay. It's okay.
So Bauke, tell me something. So following on from what you've just been listening to, right? What do you think are the most important things to help you move forward with your journalism career, and why fundamentally do you want to be a journalist in this age of fake news?
Why I want to be a journalist is because I really love stories, and I think that in order to address certain issues, I think a story is the best vehicle to do so. So to make it to make it imaginable for people. So to have to make it small or to make it really big, but and I just really love stories. So that's why I want to be a journalist.
Okay.
But the thing that I run into, quite a lot, is that on one hand I want to be like the what's it called, the objective journalism, the journalist, and not take a position on certain matters. But on the other hand, I also want to be the activist and be the one with the megaphone at the Black Lives Matter rally.
I love that. That's great.
But that is kind of, it is a conflict, being objective journalist and being.
But remember that most newspapers now are made up of two things, right? News and comment. News and comment. And they're both written by journalists, right? Commentators are almost always journalists. And we live in an age of talk radio. We live in an age of, where, to be honest, particularly in the American media, there is no difference between comment and news. And the fact that you're already able to make that distinction in your mind is vitally important. It's so important, because you will be able to work out when you're doing one and when you're doing the other. If your brief is to cover a demonstration for a local paper, then you're absolutely right. But if you're going down to help to evidence a think piece, so for instance, I made a documentary. So I had a show for 3 years on Spotify, but you can still listen to all of it. It's called We Need to Talk About. It was like a Spotify original in the UK. And one of the things we did was on 55 Tufton Street, which is basically, I wanted to make a documentary about who is standing in the way of climate change happening, like not happening. Like who exactly? What organizations? What money? Where is the money coming from? And it's called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And I found myself constantly in that place. But, Michael Moore, for instance, is a polemicist, but his work is arguably more important than a lot of rational journalism, because the sad truth is, at the moment, the scales are not equal, right? Scales tipping very much to the right, all over the world. So yeah, I realise we don't have much time, Stu. Shall I ask the others some questions?
Well,
can I still ask my question?
I'll stay on for another 10 minutes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask. Okay, good. This is such an organic conversation. It's wonderful. Go ahead, Bauke. You have the floor.
So when I was doing some research on you, I found an interview in which you said that humor has no limits. Yeah, I have it. I can share my screen. It's on Huck, I think. Huck
wow!
Mag.
Look at that! Wow. Man,
but
I've enabled sharing to everyone. So,
where is it? If you put it in the chat.
Wait, I can just share the screen if you. Oh no, I will just put the link in the chat. Wait a minute.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah. God, look at us, two arrogant pricks.
But I was wondering, you being a comedian and also a journalist, when you talk about certain, well, heavy subjects such as George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all the stuff you just talked about, why is comedy and journalism a good combination?
Oh man, that is a great question. That is like the question, right? Because, my friend, we're all cynics. We're all cynical, particularly your generation. Like, you can't tell your generation anything, right? Anything at all, right? Because you've already worked it out for yourself. You already thought to yourself. Now, just shake of the heads. Do you know what I mean when I say confirmation bias? Yes or no? Right. Okay. What it means is the idea that sometimes if you tell someone a certain fact, it won't have any effect. And I suppose this was best seen in the election of Donald Trump, but also in Brexit, where there was not one version of the truth. There was not one functioning idea of a baseline from which we can debate. There was simply my side and your side. Now, the thing is that the British are probably the most cynical bastards in the world, right? And you can't tell British anything. And if you do, they don't like you for it. In fact, they actively dislike you most of the time. But if you can make them laugh, then all the defense mechanisms go down and you might be able to get through to people. So I'm going to say some quite rude words, but you'll understand why. So sorry. But so a good example is in the banking crisis in 2008, where the British government bailed out the banks trillions of dollars and pounds for which we've never seen back. And we did a sketch where we dressed up as comedy muggers, you know, in the street when they're asking you for money for Greenpeace or something. And we're like, hello, mate, I'm just from GBF NYC. Do you work for Lloyd's? Do you work for RBS? And they're like, what's that? And it's at GBF NYC. It's give us back our fucking money, you cunts. Right? Like, it was raw, right? But that was on the front page of newspapers over here. It went viral because people had lost touch with the basic notion that comedy can sometimes do, which is, this is the point. Right? So it's about, your metaphor has to be clear. Like, I did another sketch that was probably like, was really on the line. Have you seen like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? Okay, we did the Real Housewives of ISIS, right? And it was crazy. It was very intense. A lot of people were very unhappy about it. But for me, it was really important because it was like, you know, there was a you know, Wahhabist extremist Islamic sect who were chaining women to kitchens and who had, you know, groomed them online to come over. But the thing is also, humor, good satire, you cut it down the middle. Some people will watch it one way and another person will watch it another way. But what it sure as hell will do is it will create a discussion, right? And that's also important because, you know, it's really important not to always think you're right. You know, far too many people always, do you know what as well? And this has nothing to do with journalism, but I've just turned 40, right? Poor me, old man. But in my 20s, I was always in such a rush. And in my 30s, the one phrase that I learned to say, and I'm still learning to say it, I wouldn't say I've mastered it, is to be able to honestly say to people, I don't know. I don't know. Because people are terrified of saying, I don't know. Because it sort of makes you vulnerable. And it's a hugely important point for a journalist. Because, you know, you'll meet these fuckers who are like Boris Johnson, you know, who was like, made his career out of literally going to the EU to write puff pieces about absolute nonsense to inflame nationalists, right? Very effectively, as you can see. And it's not that different, you know, in Holland, you know, as we all know. I've done some interviewing in Flanders, for instance. Interesting vibes, you know, with some pretty far right people. Anyway, I'll move on. Levi, don't think I've forgotten about you, my friend.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
You're good. It looks like you're in the back of a sort of maybe, you know, I don't know. Are you just about to go on stage or something at Glastonbury? I'm not sure. It feels like you're in the blackout bit. I'm not sure.
No, my camera is just kind of shit. So
it also looks like a style choice because it's kind of cool. So I'm kind of like, you know. So Levi, you listen to all these other people. You got any faith in journalism? Even though you're going to be a journalist, do you have faith in it?
Well, I don't really want to be a journalist. I started studying this because we have a system where you have to do a year of one study and then you can go to a higher level. And I really want to study literature.
Nice.
So, and I thought this would be a good step up.
Brilliant.
But during this year, I figured out I don't really like the industry. I think the mainstream medias have too much focus on getting money, and the coming of the internet hasn't helped. So I don't know if I still have faith that it could be salvaged.
Let me just ask you quickly: have you read any of George Orwell's work yet?
Yes.
Good. What of his have you read then?
I've read Animal Farm, and I'm currently reading 1984.
Well, you're actually reading 1984 now?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So I'm obsessed with George Orwell. I've actually tried to write a whole HBO show about his life. And I'd like you to read something for me, particularly for you. It's called The Lion and the Unicorn. And what it is it's an essay that was written at the beginning of the Second World War, which tried to convince left-leaning people to get behind the war effort and to be patriotic to fight the Nazis. And I'd recommend that you all read it because it's a very good example of, you know, what my man was talking about the idea of what's the difference between comment and journalism, right? Because he's asking them to fight the good fight. Now, not most, but a lot of great authors were journalists or started out as journalists. Why do you think that might be, Levi?
I think that the world of literature gives great chances to use metaphors to make points. For example, Fitzgerald, when he wrote The Great Gatsby, the entire book was just a giant commentary on the American dream, and it's currently just as relevant as it was back then, maybe even more relevant. But I think he was using literature. He was able to make a much greater point than he would have made when he maybe wrote an article on it for a newspaper. And I think that if people enjoy reading your book on multiple levels, it will make the idea will last longer than if it's just straight journalism. For example, people are still talking about 1984 and the points being made, but you barely hear anyone talking about a boring critique someone wrote back in the 1960s on maybe the same subject.
I couldn't agree more. I think, Levi, you've said something that is kind of what I wanted to get to towards the end of the class, which is, look, the idea of journalism is to take a fact and report it. But most people who report facts do it because it's important to them. And what Levi's just talked about is, and you know, Stu talks about at the beginning, there are many forms with which you can do your work, right? And one of you, for Emma, it might be podcasting. You know, for Kazma, it might be, you know, it might be writing a book. You know, for Levi, it might be being a filmmaker. You know, for Monique, it might be a documentary filmmaker. What I'm saying is, do you use your strengths? Remember who you are, and don't try and be anyone else. All right, Kazma, I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to come to you, and then
Right.
my man, how do I say your name? Lemert?
Actually, it's Casper. My account just meshed my first name and last name together.
Okay, Casper.
Casper.
What's your question, buddy? Let's just do this the other way around, and then I'll
All
ask.
right, my question. So we know that you use comedy and satire to, well, bring across your topics. But aren't you afraid that by doing this, you maybe simplify what you're trying to talk about?
I think absolutely, and you're absolutely right. The truth is that when we actually designed the show, we said, how do we take hard journalism and dress it up like Heat magazine? Stu, what's the equivalent to Heat magazine over there?
I have no idea. Heat magazine. I really couldn't tell you.
I don't know, like fucking that celebrity gossip shit. You know what I mean? You know, like, Kim Kardashian.
Linda.
Right. Okay. There you go. So basically, it's like, how do I take hard news and then present it like that? Because I knew that young people would be more interested in that. So the way I did it was I'd take an animation. So the show's called The Revolution Will Be Televised. Like, have a look at it. It's all on YouTube. It's really stupid, but it gets across points. And for instance, like with Israel and Palestine, we wanted the animation, and it basically started out like, if you ever want to ruin a dinner party, just bring up Israel and Palestine. And it basically talks about, the UN resolutions about the settlements in Gaza and the West Bank. And hopefully then you go, okay, people get it now. Now we can do the joke. But yeah, I do worry about that. But the truth is that I'm more interested in creating a spark of interest than being the kind of thesis paper that they eventually read. And I think that's the thing, that we're living in an age where, it's very difficult to get through to people. How do I say your name, Mr. Landman?
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Landman.
And how do I say your first name? Lamert.
Lammert.
Lammert. Okay.
Yeah.
So Lammert, what's your question, mate? And then I'll ask you both questions.
Oh man, I've been listening to you, and I've made like 3 sides of notes because I've been so interested, and in much in disagreement, I have to say. So very interesting.
Oh, good.
I'm just thinking. Yeah, I'm gonna ask it. I'm going to try to take an unpopular stance and be the devil's advocate.
Oh, that's good. I like it when this happens.
Yeah, because we started off this conversation with the strange times we're living in, and the fact that there are so many people believing strange things. Your show is centering around the whole conspiracy theory thing. One might argue that the core of journalism is seeking for the truth, as you said, and asking questions.
Yeah.
So now we're living in a world where everybody is asking questions.
Yeah.
Even the first principles.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with that? Why should we be worried? Why should we?
No problem. There's no problem with asking questions. It's just that, I've spent time walking around, places in India with people I thought were totally sane for 3 days. And then they tell me that the world's flat, and I'm like, yo, it's not flat. And they're like, prove it. And I'm like, well, I can't prove it because I can't leave this. I mean, we literally ended up trying to prove it with a giant laser that went out to show the curvature of the earth when the boat went around. But you can't prove these things to people. But the thing that you just said then is so important, because seeking for truth means understanding the difference between what a primary source is, what a secondary source is, what evidence is, what a fact is, what empirical research is. And a good example, there was an interview with the Director General of the BBC the other day by members of Parliament. It was a report on the future of the BBC. And instead of asking what was in the report, this MP, and I want to be clear about this is a member of Parliament, said to the Director General of the BBC, how many flags are in your report? And he said, what do you mean? I think there's a flag on the front. There's the British flag. Well, I think the British people would like if there were more flags in this report. And I was like, this can't be real. But it is real. That is really the time we're living in. So you have a mixture of nationalists trying to stir up nationalism. You've got people who don't have much faith in the powers that be, seeking answers in all the wrong places. Because let me tell you, I've gone down lots of YouTube rabbit holes, like I'm sure you have, my man. And, you know, you can think, wow, this is really compelling stuff, man. And then you talk to your friend and you're like, what the fuck was I thinking? Oh my God, I can't believe it. Because it's really well-made filmmaking. It's really compelling, but that doesn't make it a fact. So let me throw this back to you. How do you try to distinguish the difference between fact and fiction online?
I think I didn't make myself completely clear. I mean, obviously, some people are asking ridiculous questions and trying to prove a point without facts. Yeah, but I was getting at the point that even if somebody is asking obviously very stupid question, doesn't that make us better journalists by going back to first principles and really having to unravel what we all think is true and we all just take for granted? Doesn't that make us think more critically and more like a journalist?
I love what you're saying, and there's definitely you know, I'm old and cynical now. You know, there is a definite thing about age and how it affects your concept of these things. I think that you're absolutely right to be seeking the methods of inquiry you are. You know, I'm a big believer that, for instance, you know, some of the research that, you know, because I'm not just interested in politics, you know, I'm interested in cognitive science, I'm interested in consciousness, you know, I'm interested in ways that people are treating depression, you know, with drugs that were formerly seen as illegal substances. You know, I'm interested in, you know, power politics and the way that news is presented, because, you know, the other thing that we haven't actually spoken about, because we've talked about fact and fiction, stuff like that, is omission, is where you purposefully leave stuff out. And there's a lot of stuff, you know, for instance, in France, where if you were protesting for Palestine this weekend in Paris, you could be arrested because, even though it's egalite, liberty, fraternity, you know, as our friend George Orwell said, Levi, you know, some animals are more equal than others. You know, so I think you're absolutely right to be interrogating this stuff, but don't wear yourself out on trolls and idiots. Okay, you don't bother, right? It's like, you know, I particularly want to say this to Luca as well, because he was talking about gay rights earlier, is, listen, man, I don't know about you and what you experience online, but like, you know, there are fucking idiots everywhere. And like, you know, you got to be really careful with your own energy, you know, where you put it, how it affects your mental health. Because, you know, a lot of the time, you know, I watch my screen time go up and I think I'm doing something. And then I'm like, no, all I've done here is make money for Facebook. That's all I've done. You know, and it's wild. It's so much worse for your generation, like, because it's just like, you know, you've had phones throughout high school and social media. You know, we didn't. Anyway, listen, I'm gonna have to go in a second. Stu,
yeah,
I don't know if this has been fun for you. Monique, I'm sorry we didn't get, you know, to you. Okay.
I think, listen, what I can say is guys, any of you that have the question, Jolyon, you've given us more time than you have. I don't know how you managed to find time within the 60 minutes for it to go longer. Guys, if any of you got a question that you haven't been able to ask and want to, maybe you can email me that question and I can forward it to Jolyon. I'm sure.
Yeah, or just tweet me or something, or just like whatever, just message me on Instagram, you know, we'll chat. Like, look, you all seem really safe. You know, you all seem really lovely. Don't be Nazis, yeah?
Don't be cynical.
Don't be what?
Don't be cynical.
Don't be cynical. Yeah, no, listen, like, honestly, like, hope is everything. Like, I do what I do. I'll tell you what else. I'll tell you what else. Hope makes you look young. Because I'm telling you, all my friends, the most cynical ones, they're the fattest, they're lost all their hair. Like, I swear that shit has a physical effect on you. Mind and body. So basically, don't be a Nazi and don't be cynical.
Good.
It's not great advice.
I want to thank Jolyon. I really didn't know how this would work out in terms of this little game, but I did nothing at all, which was really great. And it just seemed to work itself. You were the ultimate masterclass host, Jolyon. I want to thank you so much for leading this and being up for being a great sport. Thank you.
Who just wrote Harry Kane, Jurgen Klinsmann, Paul Gascoigne, and Gary Lineker? Brilliant. Harry Kane, man, every day. It's extremely painful for me to talk about at the minute. It's extremely painful because he's going and it's upsetting me. It's deeply painful. But Jurgen was my man. He was my man. Brilliant. Listen, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I will say this one thing with you, for all of you. With great power comes great responsibility, right? As they said in that movie, right? We're all white, privileged people. The only other thing I would say to you is this. If you can't see this now, you will when you're older. Fight for social justice, right? Advocate for the vulnerable and hold the powerful to account. And if you ever do work where you realize you're not punching up, get out. Because it will kill you. It will hurt you. It will hurt you deeply. Right. Peace in the Middle East, everyone.
Right on.
See you soon. Stu, nice to see you, man.
You too.
Good
Thanks so much, Jolyon.
care.
Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, guys. You're going to be great. Levi, I look forward to reading the book. For real. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Thanks, everyone. Well, that was Jolyon. That was kind of a whirlwind. It didn't. The structure just completely did its own thing. But
It was wonderful. It was
Great idea, Stuart.
Yeah, it was
Really great idea.
Yeah. And complimented the students for the questions they asked.
So, Monique, I can't hear
Monique,
you.
you're barely audible.
Oh, but never mind.
No, I mean, we touched on so many different subjects. I mean, really, agency and us and them and objectivism and race, the whole thing. So I, couldn't really plan for that sort of stuff, which is why it was really nice just to see it take this organic flow through all these different personalities in the room. So thank you all for participating, for coming. And well, it's being recorded. I'll share that, of course. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for setting it up.
Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah. Thank you so much for organizing this. It's been great. I'm very glad that I've been able to be here right now. It was amazing. So thanks.
Thanks, Luca.
Yeah,
That's
really
great to
was.
hear. Really good. Okay, well, you have a good one and enjoy your evening.
You too.
Thanks, Stuart. Bye.
Bye.